What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Dickie and Donny Show presented by Business on Purpose. I am Donny, one of your co-hosts. I'm joined here by Dickie, one of my other co-hosts, and then Dathu, a guy named Matt who has started working for BOP, and we're excited to dive in here with him today. Now, if you found yourself here and you're wondering, how did I get here? BOP exists to liberate business owners from chaos, and we have the amount of fragmentation of chaos that exists in our worlds of just we have this and this, and one day we're all held together, but the reality is that we held it together with Elmer's glue, which doesn't hold anything together, and then when something else happens, it just all of a sudden the fragmentation just continues and continues and continues. So if you found yourself here today, or maybe with AI, you realize I'm creating all these things and they're just laying and we have nothing, we don't know what to do with them. And I'm using it very differently than this employee of mine or whatever it might be. Man, we have been diving in, and Matt is our local expert. And we are excited to dive into just if you're going to engage with AI, which you should, how do we set up a policy around that? So welcome to the show. We're pumped to have you.
Thanks. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Dickie, do we want to run him through the standard protocol for a new guest?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's run it. So we did this with Matt at our team meeting already, though. We did run him through a 60-second hot seat.
We
So
did.
we're going to need to be a little bit more creative than the typicals.
All right.
So, Matt, tacos or burritos?
Burrito, breakfast burrito specifically.
Breakfast burrito. Excellent.
Which of the seven dwarves do you relate to the most and why?
Probably dopey because I'm just trying to get by in life, and sometimes things work out for me and sometimes they don't, and I roll with the punches.
Matt, what's your go-to speaker choice? Like loudspeaker?
JBLs.
Like the monitors?
Yeah.
Nice. Good call.
Okay, Matt, last question. You wake up, all of a sudden you find yourself at an adult gathering. What drink do you ask for?
An Irish mule. It's like a Moscow mule, but instead of vodka, it's Jameson.
That's a
Mm.
very good choice.
Have you ever
Very
had a
good choice.
Kentucky Mule?
I have. Yeah. Fantastic. Yeah. Absolutely. I found
Man.
myself outside of Greenville a couple years back in a small town called Greer. I don't know if it's grown at all since then, but it was the first time I had a Kentucky mule, and it was fantastic.
And Greer.
Yeah,
Greenville's awesome. We just got back from Greenville, Dickie, on our BOP retreat.
We did. We
nice.
had a wonderful time in Greenville.
Fun.
Fantastic time. Yes.
Did you enjoy it? Now would be the time for us to share our tea together. Did you enjoy it?
I had a wonderful week and weekend with you guys. It was a good mix of we worked all, Thursday, Friday, had a full work days, but then had some, time at the baseball game, go to dinner, watch World Cup. We had fun too, and it was a good mix of work and fun.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was awesome. So, okay. Well, for those wondering, Matt has come on as our fractional tech stack role at Business on Purpose, and he is handling all of our tech, but really the initiative being in how we are not only using and engaging AI, but really how we can help implement it within our product. And because our product is coaching business owners, how we can help them implement it. So, Matt has done already a huge work in getting us sharpened on some of these things. So, Matt, specifically today, we're talking about the need for an AI policy, right? We've talked about this a little bit. I don't really want to give you any guardrails on your end. If I were just to ask, or if we have business owners watching this that want to ask, like, but I'm only using ChatGPT. Why do I need an AI policy? What would you say to that?
Sure. Yeah, because it's information, and where information is being stored is an important question that needs to be asked, because if you're using it every day, think of how much information, even at a free tier, how much information you're feeding it from day to day, especially if you're somebody who does use it every day. Not to mention if you're at a paid tier, which maybe there's some small businesses that are at a paid tier that can feed it even more information. Well, what kind of information are you giving it? It's kind of like, you're having a conversation. What sort of conversation are you having is a good question to ask. If I'm out with my wife and we're, out on a balcony having dinner surrounded by people, I'm going to have a different sort of conversation than
Mm,
if my wife and I are just at home by ourselves, and we can get into the nitty-gritty details of life. There's different contexts, and there's going to be different types of information I'm willing to have given the context. And the question that we need to ask ourselves is, what kind of a conversation are we having with our conversation partner, that being Claude, ChatGPT, what have you. So like realizing the type of conversation you're having would be a good maybe entryway into how should we start thinking about policy. So if you're going to have a sensitive conversation, you really should think about, am I okay giving this information over when most people don't know where that information is going to, or whether or not it's being stored, if that makes sense.
So let's dive right into the nitty-gritty of the models. If I
Yeah.
just use general ChatGPT, Claude, my content will be used to train the model. Is that right? So anything I
Yeah.
say will be building a profile or kind of shaping the way that whole
Yes.
system works. So what is the
And you say general, you're specifically talking about the free version of ChatGPT and the free version. That's what you're referencing, right?
I just mean a general chat. If I click chat,
Yep.
it's going to go somewhere. So is the prescription to first open a project or create where how do I create that hotel room versus the balcony, or how do I create the private room where I'm not
Yeah.
engaging anything else, any information outside of clear boundaries?
Yeah. So the first thing to say is that there is nothing you can do to escape the fact that any information you put in, whether it's a chat that's outside of a project or a chat inside of a project, it's still being used for training models, right?
Mm.
That information is still going somewhere. It's still going to Anthropic servers or to, ChatGPT servers or whoever they're starting to share servers with. Like Anthropic's going to start sharing servers with, Elon's company with the massive data centers being stored. Like information out is information stored somewhere. Okay.
Mm.
Now, there is an agreement that they have that we are not going to share any of this information with any third parties. The only thing that they use it for, as you said, is training newer models. So much so that at this point in time, Anthropic, 80% of the next model that's coming down the pipeline, 80% of that script is being created by the previous models, right? That's how far down we are as far as training and retraining these new models with our information. So our information, even if
Mm.
I just type in the web browser ChatGPT and ask it a question, hey, give me 10 local restaurants that I can go for lunch, right? That information, even when you X out of that, or even if you delete that chat, that's still somewhere. That's being stored on their servers. They haven't deleted it, even though your local computers, you could say, information has been deleted, if that makes sense. So like, yeah, any and all information, chat just by a web browser, even in a project, that's going on their data servers and they're using that to train new
So like if
models.
I use custom construction soft costs or custom Excel formulas, is it if even if that's in a project, that will still be used or available at some
Yep,
point?
yep,
Wow,
yep,
I did
yep,
not know that.
yep. Yeah,
Which
that's
is
in
why we've recommended to all of our clients, and we'll say it here, like, be very hesitant to put any financials in. Now,
yeah,
odds are 98 times out of 100, nothing's going to happen with it. Like,
right.
but if you information in is information stored. That's a great little like
Killer.
information in is information stored. That's a really good. And then at that point, Matt, I've heard you talk about this, and this is like worst case scenario type thinking. Like if I get in a plane, it's going down type of thought. But like any information in can or any information stored can be hacked.
Yeah,
Uh,
for sure.
Regardless of the safety, like it could be hacked.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And it's just like, plenty of businesses use Asana, right? Asana is a software used to input information that is highly sensitive, right? Just like their servers can be hacked, so can any server. Any server is liable to be hacked. Now, hopefully they have a developed enough infrastructure where they're able to obviously defend or fend off any attacks that come through, but there's no perfect system. All servers, Google, Microsoft, all of the big companies, their servers have been hacked. There's been data leaks. We got a check in the mail not too long ago because of, probably the third time that Google servers have been hacked. You know what I mean? And so there's compensation there. So you need to realize that even though there's some liability on behalf of the data centers, There's also liability on behalf of your business when you're putting that information in, just like with Asana. If Asana servers get hacked and the business that you're working with, their information gets leaked, Asana shares liability. But you as a company, you also share liability. And it's the same can be said about Claude or ChatGPT's data centers as well. If information gets leaked and that gets tracked back to your business, then you share some of the liability, in which case that's why we're having this conversation today is what should AI policy look like on behalf of maybe businesses that are implementing it.
Yeah, I mean, when I think about IP or protected, business structure, so like if I own a business, my processes is my product and how I create it, how I build a home, how I build a product. If I've got really clear instructions on how to develop this material or run these teams, like that's the proprietary work of the business. And so
Yeah.
if I get all of that into a model at some point and someone says, I want to start a business making the same widgets I do, I mean, is there a point at which the models learned enough from enough people that can then just it used to be this cost of starting up a business was really high because you need
Yeah.
relationships and materials and capital. But if the information is all there, is it possible that, there's less barrier to entry to starting businesses? Is that something you see as a legitimate concern?
It could be. I don't know how much of a legitimate concern it is. To me, it's kind of like, it's kind of like ships out of a harbor, when the sea level rises, it rises all ships, in my opinion, and the fact that, yes, are these models learning off of what you're developing so that other businesses can use this and be benefited from it as well? Yes, but it's kind of rising all sea levels. Now, if your concern is, well, I mean, this is something that I crafted through ChatGPT, through Claude, and I want to have like my trademark. I want to have my stamp on it. I want to have some like if you want to go through the patency process of trying to, trademark it or whatever, copyright it, the process is a lot more complicated just because you've used a process outside of your original processes to craft or create something. I don't think it's too much of a barrier to get something patented. And now, if you ask if you ask servers or Claude or ChatGPT to craft something exactly what you crafted, I'm actually not sure what it would do in that scenario. If it, I'm assuming it has access to patents and that sort of information to know not to duplicate processes like that. But yeah, that's a lot to think through when you're trying to think about
Yeah, I'm thinking
privacy and
like,
information.
yeah, like my production builders that have a backlog, that have construction costs. They've got kind of these really unique cost structures and ways to finance homes and finance specs and build. They've built this on their own. So their
Yeah,
ability to take capital, invest it, get low costs, build a home for cheap costs is their secret sauce. That's how they get their
yeah,
margin. And so I'm wondering if those costs get leaked or financials get leaked or informed, if those are used to inform other models,
yeah.
it would be, I don't know if that's a real, I'm just thinking through this.
Yeah, so yeah, it's assumed by the person using the LLM that the information that they are throwing in there is information that you are agreeing to when you put that information in there, even though it's not a signed contract, right? But it is in the, user agreement that any information you put in on there, you're acknowledging or you're offering up that, hey, the LLM that Anthropic is using, they're allowed to use this information to develop future models. You can't just put in information and be like, you can't use this for future models. That's just not how it works. That's just the user agreement on behalf of anybody who uses it that you're giving them permission to do this when you input any information.
Mm.
So, because I think that, and you mentioned LLM, like I think we have a familiarity of what that is. Break down in 20 seconds. What's an LLM?
It's a type of AI called a large language model. So if you've ever played a computer in chess, you've already interacted with AI. Okay. It's anticipating, it's been trained off of, uh, all the past games that have ever been played in chess that have been recorded, that have been put through a computer system. And so that computer system has been trained off of that to learn how to play chess. In the same way, a large language model is just trained off of all of the language of human records in order to develop a predicting model of, well, if I say The cat went into the room too. It's essentially guessing what's the most probable way to finish out that sentence based off of all of the
Everything.
language that have been inputted in.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks for breaking that down. We just switched, and I know early on I would hear AI, I'd hear chat, and I'd hear LLM, and I thought they were totally un. And so you just mentioned that. I think that'd be helpful. So I think what you've done is put a lot of fear into a lot of people here today, and I think that was the point. But I think the
Changed my
need for
pants. So
policy
yeah,
around this. What'd you say?
I just changed my pants. I was so scared.
Oh, good for you. Third time today, I think, for you, according to our earlier conversation.
Second time today.
Second? Okay,
Yeah, it's
sorry.
been a good day.
Uh, it's been a good day. You've clearly, I think there's a need for policy around this because you think
Yeah.
of people that don't know the implications of everything, just sharing everything they absolutely can. Like, whew,
Yeah.
that's not super helpful or safe to do. So there's need for policy regardless if you're the owner and you're the only one doing it. But like think about if you're the owner and you're putting stuff in and you have a project manager that wants to start dabbling and you don't give them any guidance. And you're like, hey, just go like start figuring out how to make your job easier. Well, they're going to put their budget, they're going to put
Hmm.
like they're going to put every detail in, and that's probably not the safest thing to do. They're also going to waste a lot of time in doing it because they won't know the best way. So policy is huge. AI policy or an AI process for a business of, hey, here are the safeguards, here are the filters, anything you put through, if it fit, like whatever that is. Matt, how would you recommend like a business start processing through a policy? Like,
Yeah.
is it something, do they go buy one online? Do they just create one using the chat itself? Like, how do they go to actually create said policy?
Sure. The first thing I would walk through is what type of conversation are you okay with having? If you're out to a business lunch, okay, what are the things you're going to talk about at a business lunch with, 50 other people in the room? What are the things you're okay with talking about there versus what are the kinds of conversations you're going to have in a closed door business meeting amongst your team, right? You're much more willing to talk about names of clients, specific numbers, specific tools that you're using. And if that's the case, if you're not willing to have those conversations out in public, I would at least put a giant question mark beside that type of information. So when you're starting to talk about the type of information, that's a team by team thing. Maybe your team at the end of the day just comes to the conclusion that, hey, just like we took a risk by using Asana and giving them private information, and if we just want to transfer all of that type of information over to Claude and personalized projects and stuff like that, and your company from top bottom is okay with doing that, that's great, right? But there's going to be some sort of guardrails that you're going to want to develop as far as information that you want to, because even you don't even give Asana necessarily everything. There's going to be some question marks of the type of information that your company wants to allow these processes to use to train future models. And then at some point in the future, it's not an if, it's a when those servers and that information gets leaked, there's going to be liability that you're going to share in that, and that's the risk that you're going to take, and hopefully that is a very minimal risk. Yeah, that's going to be from company to company decide what type of information. So what type of conversation is the first key point, and then secondly, as a team, kind of figuring out how can we as a team be consistent about how we want to use AI. Are we okay just hanging out in the chats, just going to be like, hey, I want to make this Excel better. How can I do that? And then it run it for me? Or am I okay with my team using AI to devise an entire process top down instead of having humans, 80% into that task? Maybe the humans 20% in that task, and then the AI is 80% into that task. So how much of our processes do we want to automate is another question that we need to ask ourselves as a company, because thinking future down the line, if a lot of your costs are being cut by the efficiency of what you're working at now, okay, what are you doing with personnel? Are we bringing in more
Hmm.
work? Are we going to eventually have to cut positions? Like what are you as a business, what is your team comfortable with in the level of AI that you are implementing at your company? So those would be some, at least three initial things.
Your first thing you said, define the context of the conversation. So you've
Yeah.
got private conversation that you say that's restricted. So you
Yeah.
wouldn't put that in. Then maybe you have, let's call it a semi-public, and that's like something you'd probably share with a friend. And then
Yeah.
you've got public you'd share with anybody. I mean, is there a
Yeah.
way, can you give me a couple of examples of each of those? So maybe like private would be financials.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, private could be financials. I would say friend, you know, now this is just me, this could be company to company, but I'm okay talking about the kind of work certain companies are involved in and even naming those names. I mean, that isn't anything that anybody can't already access via the internet. So, I'm not
Mm.
saying that you can't name a specific business, right? That might be somewhere in the middle. Perhaps something in the middle could be, naming the CEO of that name or the specific, person that you were interacting with to walk through business implementation stuff. That could be somewhere in the middle as well, and then maybe something publicly accessible. I don't know. I would say types of information regarding as far as org charts go, how a business typically organizes itself. It would be something that could be in the public sector as well. I don't know, Brandon. What are your thoughts? You've been doing this as well. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
as far as those buckets?
First off, and there's grace here. It's Dickie. Um,
Oh,
no, it's not. It's
sorry.
Donnie.
Sorry.
Wait,
Uh,
are you trying to usurp the Dickie role? You trying to be the big
Oh.
Dickie?
no, those are shoes I can't fill. And two, usurped.
Usurp. Usurp the Dickie.
That's like your coffee, usurping your coffee right now, just slurping it up. Yeah, I think I love that framework of even thinking about like, okay, we're totally in public. We're like in a break room where it's around our workplace, not totally private, but not public. And then
Yeah,
there's the like one-on-one room. I think that's good. Man, I think the one-on-one room, I would right now, without knowing more about this stuff, and we brought you in because I have a limited knowledge on this, and I feel like I was driving a moped on an interstate. This is like time we buy a 2003 Camry. You know what I'm saying?
that's right.
What year is yours?
12.
12. And it's a Corolla. It's not a Camry.
Yes. Yes, sir.
It's close.
Thing I'll run for.
So it's information like that that I would say is in the public to me, like what you
Yeah.
drive or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I think right now, if I'm gonna say what's reserved for the one-on-one time, high trust, high vulnerability, I would say all financials, and
Yeah.
I would say specific details about business relationships that could hinder either side's trust. So
Mhm.
like if I'm a big realtor and I'm like, yeah, we work with these 4 or 5 builders, that doesn't break trust to acknowledge that I work with these builders. Like
Yeah.
that to me is probably in the public sector. But if I'm a realtor using this and I'm going to engage with, like, here's all of the revenue we have made on this builder, and here's the specific breakdown of our contract details that, like, they got really frustrated with. So we had to go back to the drawing board. Like, I could see someone doing that in an effort to provide context to the LLM or to the AI to like help them better steward the relationship. But that context, when shared, was one on one, like behind the scenes context that is could potentially hinder the view of either side. Like that to me
Yeah.
is more of a private one. I don't typically find on standard process, like I would say that's that middle line. I really, as long as we're mindful of it, I think we can put a lot of that into this thing of like, hey, here for our builders, here's our process for how we run an electrical walk. Like to me, that isn't solely for the one-on-one. I know you
Yeah.
could argue, but we do an electrical walk different than everybody else. I still don't think you're in trouble there to me on some of those things. If it's, man, this is the process for how we invoice someone, like everybody invoices people, I think you're probably fine there. It's the more intricate, hey, here is the specifics within our payroll details. Not necessarily we pay payroll every 15th of the month, which is today, by the way, but it's like this is the specifics of Matt's breakdown. And hit like if you're someone that works with payroll in your company and you want the AI or Claude to know every detail of what everybody's doing with their benefits and with it, like that is out of line.
Yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is a that they're it's almost like I forget who it was, and this is going to sound a little crass, but it was a long, long time ago, and someone there was they were asking like, well, how do you define pornography? And they were saying that because there was like exploitation in the streets, and they were like, he was saying this is not right, and they're like, well, how do you even define it? And he said, I'll tell you this, you know it when you see it. Like that
Yeah.
was his definition. I think this is kind of the similar of like if it does something inside of you where you're like, God, I don't know if I want to share that, it's a great sign to not share it yet. Do your
Yeah.
research. Like, what should that look like? So that's kind of what I would say is you know it's wrong when you see it.
Yeah. If it makes you uncomfortable, I mean, you shouldn't sacrifice ethics on the altar of efficiency. I know there's a lot of businesses that, I mean, I think it's over like 50%
Say
of
that again.
businesses, right?
Say that. That was good. Say that again.
You shouldn't sacrifice ethics on the altar of efficiency.
Hmm. What's your
So like
PhD going to be in again?
uh, theological ethics, AI
Hmm.
and robotics.
Interesting.
That's what I'm hoping to do. But all that to say is, if there's question marks, if it makes you uncomfortable, you should probably err on the side of caution, not err on the side of efficiency, is all I'm saying. Because we're already becoming more efficient. And it's the businesses that are going to be like, how far can we push efficiency, that are the ones that are going to get in trouble. And they're the ones that, for the most part, and this has been my anecdotal experiences, I don't really care to work for the businesses that only care about how efficient can we be as a business, right? I want to know that the businesses that I work for care about me as a human being. And typically that doesn't look like being the most efficient machine you could absolutely create, because efficiency doesn't care about human flourishing. It cares about institutional flourishing.
Man, it's almost anti-American to say that. I don't think you're anti-American, but I think that the way that private equity has gone and the way that it is stripped down, made process straightforward, take 100 companies, roll them up, build it all together. It's for the sake of really the dollar or the efficiency of
Yeah.
money. There's a group in Charlotte that is investing in long-term companies and relationships for the sake of more than just making money. And I've really enjoyed working with alongside a friend who's talked a lot about how they're in family office private equity, but not for just the sake of making money. There's more to their value. So I appreciate what
Yeah,
you're
that's
saying
awesome.
about like just the,
Hmm.
the purpose of work. Let me go back to that second piece you said about consistency and how you use AI in the
Yeah.
office. So like talk to me about, that's almost like your allowances to what you're able to do in an office. Are we able to build a model? Are we
Yeah.
able to build our own tool or an artifact? Like talk to me a little bit more about why a certain company would need to be more guarded or protective of the functional use of AI.
Yeah. A couple things to say here, and maybe I'll just relate this back to what like an actual policy can look like too. A policy doesn't need to be another 5 to 10 pages added to an employee handbook that, you can make sure at the beginning of each year the employee says they read down through it and sign off. Like it needs to be something that is functional and consumable. It can be a one pager. It doesn't even need to be paragraph text. It can be literally a column of don'ts and do's.
Dues.
Like
Yeah.
not even just allows, but like we want our company to like intentionally use AI because there is a level that we're using it to be more efficient. So it's like if you're just using it willy-nilly and you don't have a set process in place, then it begins to feel like maybe you're just playing around, or maybe you're just using this as kind of like an enhanced Google search, which isn't bad, but isn't intentional, right? And something that we want to do when we're working with technology and using technology of any kind is to be intentional with it, right? When we're leisure with technology, that's not going to be productive for beneficial outcomes for either you or your clients. It's like when you're using a new form of technology, you do want to be intentional about it. So what can this look like? What can this process look like? So I'll give you the nitty gritty of at least how we've been implementing at a basic level projects in Claude. So like projects in Claude, if you're unsure, if you want to move just past the like, hey, ask chat a question. That's great. You can ask chat a question and then maybe you come back and ask it, maybe you were curious about restaurants in the area, but then you became curious about, oh, I wonder what like the newer 2013 Toyota Corollas look like, and what their line starts to look like. And that's going to be a new chat, and it's not going to have the same memory features as the previous chat. It's not going to know what you suggested as far as lunch choices. But like if you get specific information regarding, like maybe I want to start a tea company. Okay. And all the information I want to have chats so that they can remember, so I can build memory. I want to start a project and I'm going to put my tea company in that project. And anytime I talk about my tea company, so that the tool can just progressively get better and better and more efficient with how I talk, what I'm interested in, I'm just going to reserve that chat for that project. So now I have an ongoing chat, even if I start new chats within a project, that, okay, this is my project that I'm only going to use for my tea company, and I can start as many chats as I want, and it's just going to get better and better and more efficient to know what I'm talking about, and we're not back at square one when I start a new chat. Okay. So that is just at a very basic level. How can we go from like, if the scale's from 1 to 10 and 10 being the power users of every corridor and 1 starting at chat, 2 might be like, hey, create a project. Every time our company talks about the differences in black, white, green teas, this is the project that we're going to talk about. And these are our vendors for that project that we're going to discuss how we can outsource new teas. So that's just, if I'm going to take it from like 10 miles an hour to 20 miles per hour, we can start with project, get in there. Hey, even if you can move your chats from here to there, right, you're already doing something more efficient. So like maybe a to-do column in your policy is anytime you talk about A, do it in a project. It can be something as
So
simple as that.
just for the layman, I want to make sure I understand. Claude doesn't necessarily remember chat to chat, but if you put it in the context of a project with instructions, description, and it'll build memory, and then it'll
Yes.
be more efficient in the use of energy and data. Is that right?
Yeah, so chat has something called a context window. If you've ever heard of a context window, it's the amount of information you can feed before it starts to have some level of amnesia. Think of it as memory, right? So its context is its memory. A free user is going to have less memory, right? The next tier up is going to have a little bit more memory, right? But once you hit that limit, what it's going to do is do something called compact, right? It's going to summarize that information, get rid of all of the details of it, and then just based off of that summary, continue that chat from there. Well, you're going to lose some details within that, which
Mm.
is again why you might want to create multiple projects. Because chat context windows for each project, you don't want to put your entire company under one project because especially even if you're working at a pro level or even at a max level, you're going to have a limited window. So yeah,
And
something to keep in
say
mind.
I've got 10 chats I've opened about the same kind of stuff. Can I ask for a markdown file or a context file for each one of those? Put it into can I synthesize? How would I synthesize?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's information that you want detailed and outlined, yeah, a markdown file could work. For someone who doesn't know, it's essentially it's essentially creating a PDF, moving it to the files so that you have a greater context window or more memory. So it's kind of like you've transformed that chat into a different sort of file. You've attached it under the part that says files, and now you've freed up your memory to do something like that. Or, there's with technology, there's like 10 ways to do one thing. There's other ways to do that as well, and you can always free up more memory. It's pretty easy to do, but just something to be mindful of and why you might want to move out of just individual chats into a project.
Mm.
That is so
So,
good.
so
That is so
consistency
good.
wise with using it, getting into a project, that's kind of step one. What's another way to be consistent with a team or to set the standards of how to use technology?
Yeah, if you want to take it a little bit further, if your business has the revenue to upgrade to like a Teams account, information can be shared as far as like if I didn't have a Teams account and I just had a pro account, like right, that's the first kind of pay tier. But like I wanted my team to have access to my information, my projects, that really couldn't be a thing. Okay, they would have to have access to my account, and if you pay for and I'm not, I'm not being paid by Anthropic or anybody to say this. This is just functionally how it works and the limitations of it, and what you'd need to do to be able to function more, consistently across your team is to have a place where you could actually share projects across your entire team. In which case, they have a paid tier for that if you want to take it somewhere like that. So it just depends your financial revenue and what you're willing to pay for it, and that sort of thing. But nonetheless, if you did want to share that across your team, you could go to the next tier if you wanted to take it, a bit deeper. You don't necessarily need to pay for a Teams account. You could send off the same PDF to your entire team and be like, hey, team, this PDF is part of our core values. Right. When I'm interacting with AI, I want it to know that these are our core values. This is our framework. I don't want it be like, I don't want AI to necessarily be a car out in the open road going at any which direction. I kind of like a trolley that keeps on its rails that continues the trajectory of where I want this business to go.
Hmm.
So if I wanted it to be more on the rails of where I'm taking my business, what are some other things that you could put in the files of that? You can put your core values, you could put missional statements, you could put, whatever further defines the type of business you are, the kind of business, where you're going. Like you already have that information somewhere. It's simple as dragging it and dropping it into files. And now, the AI system knows, oh, okay, this is the trajectory of the business. Okay, what if I want, the interaction to cut through the BS, right? I don't want it to, you know, I don't necessarily want it to sing my praises every time I come up with an idea, right?
That's
Hey,
great.
I got an idea. What
Or you
if
and me are different.
I don't want, yeah, maybe you do want that. I don't know. For a business that seems counterintuitive, but like maybe you want it to be like, hey, you can go into something called instructions to get to the next level and be like, hey, when you interact with me, I want you to be critical and fair, right? Just something like critical and fair. And that's a very simple instruction to put in, but now that's part of its locked and loaded memory that every time you throw in an idea, now it's not going to be like, wow, yeah, that's an amazing idea. I can't believe you thought of that. Like, here's maybe some ways to improve upon that. And in actuality, it's like, actually, the idea was kind of crappy. You know what I mean? So, like, this has been an ongoing issue with LLMs,
Have
is
you
that
heard of the
they're,
council? You
what's
know what?
that?
The council, have you heard of this? Like there's 5 people that are on these instructions. I want you to be this type of leader,
Yeah,
this type of leader.
yes.
It's like, I want you to think for all of them and then synthesize. Have you used that or is that just kind of novel? I haven't eever tried it.
No, I would say it's a little bit more beneficial when you're working in co-work instead of just working in general projects, just because again, the context window. When you create like 5 subagents and then tell them to interact, they actually are like anytime you enter information in, there's a token amount. And of course, there's a limited amount of information that's a token amount that every tier has. And so say if I'm at a free tier and I'm like, hey, I want to be efficient. I've heard about this council thing. Great. Let me put in my subagents that I wanted to kind of cater out. Instead of you entering in the text and expending tokens, now it's going to do that for you. And you're going to see, okay, seemed like my interaction time at a free level I could maybe get 3 to 4 hours, but then it would cut me off and be like, okay, you have to wait 5 more hours, right? If you do that with subagents at a free level, you're going to take that 3 hour window down to about half an hour. Because, okay, instead of you prompting it, you've prompted it to prompt itself, and now it's going to feed tokens on your behalf, and it's going to have a 5-way conversation instead of a 2-way conversation. So, like, just
Mm.
something like the practical use to be mindful of when you're doing stuff like that. So if you're at a paid tier, that's less of an issue, but that is cool to have. Like it's efficient and it really does stem out what we're talking about, taking the instructions to a new level so that you can again not have it sing your praises when it's like, okay, you need real type of feedback. Another thing to add to that is that's only useful, it should only be useful if you can't have humans interacting with you at that level. Like if you're some guy that works in a back office and maybe you have a very small business or something like that, if you have people, like that's the type of feedback you want from. But like that is a good complement, not a supplement to your processes. If you
Mm.
want to have that on top of the things that you're doing and interacting with people, like because I'm people
Mm.
centered, man. I want to use these tools, but I don't want to use these tools so I interact with people less. I want to use these tools so that I can free up more of my time to interact with people. So I'm hoping again those businesses should be acting like
I
that
love
way.
that view of technology. I don't think that technology really has gone that way though, because it seems like to me, technology has made me more reliant on it and more sucked into
Yeah,
it rather than released
yeah,
from it. Just when we were talking about this last week, but I told my kids the same thing. I was like, it's made life easier in some respects, but now we're so integrated and tied to it that I can't
yeah.
not use technology. And it's now I'm like, God, I hate this. But I'm thankful for like, okay, we can do a Zoom call like
Yeah,
this. It's
yeah,
incredible,
Yeah.
but also
Yeah.
challenging.
I think, Matt, you mentioned, and we'll wrap up with this. You mentioned like we have to use this in a huge way to be a complement and not a supplement. I think that
yeah,
alone is a filter for a business is like, what are your current working? You talk about building out a policy. Like, man, if your policy was, I only want you to do things that are complementary to our business and not supplementary, where like you're not trying to replace anything. Now automations come into play and there really is like a, man, as I've engaged with this, I've probably taken a 5 hour process and put it down to a 2 hour process. And that doesn't give
yeah.
me 3 more hours to go home
Right.
from work. It gives me 3 more hours to engage with my clients. Like that's how
Yeah,
I've perceived it. And I think the business would be like, heck yeah, like keep running with that. But that supplement versus complement is I think a really good filter. So Matt, thanks for your time. Super knowledgeable. And this, I know if you're listening to this hoping for your AI policy to be written for you, that didn't happen. In a lot of ways, it probably feels like the information was fragmented. But what I want to encourage you with is you can reach out to Brandon or Shawn or TECH at businessonpurpose.com. We would be happy to meet with you. Matt will write or help you write your business AI policy for pennies on the dollar, about 100 pennies for every dollar. So there's no deal, but he will do it for you.
For
So
sure.
no, we exist to liberate you from chaos. And right now, this world of AI does feel chaotic. Let us help liberate you from that. AI policy is huge, whether you're a solopreneur or a company with 100 employees. That policy is crucial so that your filters are accurate and you're not using AI. You're not having a one-on-one conversation in a wide open room with a billion people listening. That's important. So Matt, thank you for your time. Dickie, as always, it's great to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks for
Matt,
having me.
thank you so much. Really learned a ton.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. It was a pleasure.
All right. See y'all.
See ya.
Peace.